I watched a $400 Milwaukee angle grinder seize up and die in the middle of cutting through a steel door that was the only thing between me and getting out of a flooded basement. 11 minutes of use. The bearings locked, the motor burned out, and water was rising past my knees while I held expensive dead weight. The backup I grabbed was a $29 Chicago Electric from Harbor Freight that looked like it belonged in a scrapyard. Ugly as hell, sounded like a dying animal, but it chewed through that steel like it had a personal vendetta. 3 years later, that ugly bastard is still running. That was my wake-up call about tools. While the tactical community obsesses over military-grade everything and YouTube channels push $1,000 loadouts, there's a shadow network of people who've actually watched infrastructure collapse, building their capabilities from the most unlikely place in America, Harbor Freight. The tool store that looks like a graveyard where everything costs less than dinner. Here's the secret nobody talks about. The guys who know what real collapse looks like don't shop at Harbor Freight despite the cheap reputation. They shop there because of it. When you've been in places where parts become impossible, repairs become fantasy, and looking like you have valuable equipment can get you killed, you develop a fundamentally different relationship with tools. Not the Instagram wordy ones, the ugly functional ones that keep working when everything photogenic becomes spare parts. This isn't poverty shopping. This is weaponized cheapness based on 4 principles that most people will never understand until it's too late to matter. First principle, infrastructure assumption reversal. Professional tools assume professional environments, clean shops, climate control, available parts, repair services. Harbor Freight tools assume you're working in hell with a car battery, a flashlight, and no backup coming. When the lights go out permanently, which assumption proves correct? Second principle, camouflage through poverty. A Harbor Freight angle grinder doesn't whisper valuable equipment worth stealing. It screams broke-ass loser with nothing worth taking. Meanwhile, it destroys the same barriers and cuts the same steel as tools costing 10 times more. Looking poor while being capable becomes the ultimate operational security when resources get scarce and neighbors start keeping lists. Third principle, redundancy mathematics. For the price of 1 professional tool, you can buy 3 to 5 Harbor Freight equivalents plus consumables. When the supply chain snaps and replacement parts become museum pieces, having backup units means the difference between maintaining capability and becoming helpless. Single points of failure kill you in the real world. Fourth principle, disposable doctrine. These tools are designed to be replaced, not maintained. No specialized parts, no proprietary consumables, no manufacturer support requirements. When civilization stops providing backup services, which tool philosophy makes more sense? Now, here's where this gets dangerous, because the people who understand these principles don't buy random cheap tools. They've identified 5 integrated systems that, when combined, create independence from everything most people assume will always be there. System 1. Access and barriers become suggestions. The foundation system revolves around making any physical obstacle temporary. Picture yourself at 3 in the morning, rain hammering your face, trying to cut through a steel security gate while your neighbor's house burns behind you. The Chicago Electric angle grinder WEN4518 anchors this reality at $29, delivering 7.5 amp motor power that chews through hardened steel, rebar, locks, chains, and security barriers with orange sparks flying into the darkness. The tool weighs 4 pounds soaking wet, operates on whatever power you can scrounge, and announces your presence to anyone within a quarter mile. But when the alternative is watching everything burn because you can't get through a locked gate, discretion becomes a luxury you can't afford. Here's where understanding overlap becomes survival. You pair the grinder with Harbor Freight's Pittsburgh 36-inch bolt cutters at $39 and the Chicago Electric reciprocating saw at $34. This trinity covers every material and access scenario you'll encounter. Steel barriers that laugh at bolt cutters get the grinder treatment, with sparks reflecting off your safety glasses in the rain. Silent operations where grinder noise would bring unwanted attention get the bolt cutter approach, the metallic snap echoing through empty streets as cable and chain give way to mechanical advantage. The reciprocating saw handles the precision work, cutting through composite materials, processing wood obstacles, and handling controlled demolition that requires finesse rather than aggression. Here's the scenario they won't discuss on YouTube. When the grid failed for 6 days last winter and grocery stores stayed locked open, the difference between having food and going hungry came down to 30 inches of steel cable securing a loading dock. You could hear kids crying in houses down the street while tons of food sat 30 feet away behind that cable. Bolt cutters barely scratched the hardened steel. The angle grinder went through it in 40 seconds, orange sparks reflecting off puddles while the sound echoed off empty storefronts. That access led to enough supplies to keep an entire neighborhood fed until trucks started moving again. The tool cost $29. The alternative was listening to hungry children while food rotted behind a lock. System 2, power and manufacturing independence. The second system creates manufacturing capability when factories stop running and repair shops close permanently. Built around the Hercules 20V cordless drill impact driver combo, typically available for $59 during sales, this system extends far beyond normal construction applications into the realm of improvised engineering under pressure. Picture the scene. Power's been out for 8 days, your neighbor's generator seized from bad fuel, and winter's coming whether you have heat or not. The drill becomes your precision hole boring machine for water system construction, mixing device for concrete and adhesives, and driver for improvised machinery. But the impact driver reveals the real power. 1,400 inch-pounds of torque that sounds like a machine gun when it hits resistant material, removing lug nuts from abandoned vehicles, driving structural screws into masonry, and disassembling industrial equipment for parts harvesting. The whine of the impact driver echoes off concrete walls as bolts that haven't moved in decades suddenly give way to mechanical advantage. You can feel the torque trying to twist the tool from your hands as it processes fasteners that manual tools couldn't touch. Adding Harbor Freight's Chicago Electric stick welder to $120 transforms fastening capability into true manufacturing power. This AC-only welder delivers 115 amps of joining force that creates permanent steel connections while throwing sparks that illuminate your work area in harsh, flickering light. The welding arc sounds like bacon frying amplified through a megaphone, and the smell of hot metal and burning flux fills your lungs while you create solutions that didn't exist 5 minutes ago. The oscillating tool completes the precision end at $35. The high-pitched, vibrating whine cuts through materials that would jam or bind traditional tools, composite materials, tight piece removal work, and delicate operations that require surgical control rather than aggression. Last month, a guy I know used this exact system to convert a broken generator into a working one using parts from 3 different machines. The oscillating tool removed corroded bolts that penetrating oil couldn't touch, its whining vibration cutting through rust and corrosion in spaces where larger tools couldn't fit. The impact driver disassembled the donor units without damaging salvageable parts, each bolt coming free with that distinctive machine gun sound. The welder created custom brackets to mount mismatched components, sparks flying in the darkness while he fabricated solutions that no manufacturer ever intended. System 3, movement and mechanical advantage. Human limitations become irrelevant when you understand mechanical advantage. This system centers around 3 tools that extend physical capability beyond normal human ranges: moving dollies for load transport, chain hoists for vertical lifting, and submersible pumps for fluid management.
The smart modifications separate operators from civilians, extended handles for better leverage, additional tie-down points for load security, and even detachable wheels for improved storage and concealment. The real force multiplier comes from Harbor Freight's chain hoists at $45, mechanical advantage devices that allow single-person lifting of loads exceeding 1 ton. These tools enable equipment recovery, structural positioning, and salvage operations that would otherwise require crews or heavy machinery. The submersible pump at $22 addresses the reality that water management extends far beyond drinking and cooking. Defensive applications, decontamination procedures, fire suppression capability, and industrial processes all require water in specific locations and quantities. The pump enables strategic positioning that gravity systems can't achieve. Here's what happened during the ice storm that knocked out power for 9 days. A neighbor's elderly father fell in his basement and couldn't get up. The stairs were blocked by a fallen support beam that would have required 3 men to move safely. A $40 come-along anchored to the floor joist lifted that beam in controlled increments while one person operated it and another guided the injured man to safety. Emergency services weren't available. They were dealing with hundreds of similar calls and couldn't reach outlying areas. That come-along cost less than a tank of gas and saved a life that professional rescue couldn't have reached in time. The submersible pump proved its worth during the same storm, when a neighbor's basement flooded, threatening the foundation of his house and everything stored down there. Professional pump rental was impossible. Everything was already committed or broken down. A $20 Harbor Freight submersible pump powered by a car battery cleared the entire basement in 4 hours. The pump is still working. The house foundation is still solid. The professional services still aren't available when you actually need them. System 4. Precision when guessing kills you. Measurement capability becomes critical when you're reverse engineering solutions or fabricating replacement parts without manufacturer support. Harbor Freight's digital calipers at $14 provide thousands-inch accuracy for mechanical work, ammunition reloading, and quality control during improvised manufacturing. But here's a medical application nobody discusses openly. Those same calipers become life-saving medical instruments when professional care becomes unavailable. Last year, when a neighbor's son got his hand caught in farm machinery at 2 in the morning, during a blizzard that made roads impassable, those calipers measured wound depth to determine whether arteries were compromised, tracked swelling progression to monitor for compartment syndrome, and measured the foreign metal fragments that had to be removed before infection set in. The scene was something out of a field hospital, the kitchen table cleared and scrubbed with bleach, his wife holding a flashlight with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, the kid screaming every time the oscillating tool buzzed to life. The smell hit you first. Blood mixed with the acrid burning plastic from the tool's motor housing as it worked through fabric and debris. The vibrating cutting action allowed for controlled removal of clothing and machinery fragments from around the mangled fingers without causing additional tissue damage. You could hear the tool's motor straining as it worked through the tougher materials embedded in the wound, and every few seconds you had to stop because the kid would nearly pass out from the pain. The calipers measured each fragment before removal. Some pieces were deeper than they looked, and pulling the wrong one could have severed tendons or damaged nerves permanently. The precision control enabled cutting away damaged tissue edges for better healing, and the tool's ability to work in tight spaces meant access to wound areas that scissors or surgical instruments couldn't reach safely. When the roads finally cleared 12 hours later and they reached the hospital, the emergency room doctor said the field treatment had been textbook perfect. The difference between saving that hand and losing it to infection came down to $35 worth of Harbor Freight precision equipment and the knowledge to use it properly when professional help wasn't available. The measurement tools also enable electrical work beyond basic house wiring. Wire gauge determination, component sizing, and tolerance checking all require precision that eyeballing can provide. When you're maintaining life support equipment or communication systems with salvaged parts, precision measurement becomes a life or death capability. System 5. Mobile Command Center. The final system transforms scattered capability into organized, portable power through Harbor Freight's rolling tool chests. At $150 for substantial storage capacity, these systems protect tools while maintaining organization that enable rapid deployment under stress conditions. The rolling capability creates mobile workshop functionality, bringing complete tool capability to problem locations rather than transporting materials to tools. This matters enormously when your operating environment becomes fluid or when security concerns make fixed workshop locations untenable. Smart operators modify these chests extensively. Additional locks for security, weatherproofing for outdoor storage, mounting points for portable lighting, and even hidden compartments for sensitive equipment. One operator I know converted his tool chest into a complete bug-out workshop by adding battery compartments for cordless tools, foam-lined drawers for precision instruments, magnetic strips for metal tools, and even a fold-out workspace that doubles the available workspace. The real test came when his neighborhood became contested territory during civil unrest. With 20 minutes notice that looters were working their way down his street, that rolling chest became his lifeline. You could hear distant shouting getting closer, see flashlight beams sweeping through windows 2 houses down, feel your heart hammering while you secured tools, consumables, and critical equipment. Everything mobile within 10 minutes, the chest rolling through muddy gravel that crunched under the wheels while you navigated by memory in near darkness. He rolled the entire workshop into his garage, covered it with a tarp, and evacuated to his brother's place 15 miles away. When he returned 3 days later, neighbors' houses were stripped of everything valuable. His workshop survived because it looked like trash under that tarp, and the mobility meant it was an anchor to a fixed location that could be systematically searched. What can go wrong? The dark side of cheap tools. Before you get carried away thinking Harbor Freight tools are miracle devices, understand their limitations and failure modes. These tools will break, usually at the worst possible moment, and recognizing the warning signs can mean the difference between inconvenience and catastrophe. I learned this the hard way during a 3-day power outage when a Chicago Electric angle grinder died while cutting through a falling tree that was blocking our only road out. The bearing seizure happened with no warning. 1 second it was cutting, the next it was locked solid and smoking. No gradual noise increase, no vibration warnings, just sudden death while sparks were flying and time was running out. Having backup tools meant the job got finished, but the lesson stuck. These tools don't fail gracefully. Chicago Electric angle grinders typically fail in 3 ways: bearing seizure from contamination, motor burnout from overheating, or gear tooth stripping from overload. The bearings usually announce their impending death with increasing noise and vibration over several days of use, but sometimes they just seize without warning. Smart operators keep bearing grease and replacement wheels on hand, but when the bearings start screaming, you've got about 2 hours of cutting time left. The Hercules drill batteries are the weak link in the power system. Harbor Freight lithium batteries last about 18 months under normal use, 12 months under abuse, and 6 months under continuous use. Cold weather kills them faster, and once they start losing capacity, the decline accelerates rapidly. Smart operators maintain 3 batteries per tool and rotate them to
Running a damaged pump until catastrophic failure usually destroys the motor as well. Chain hoists fail when the ratchet mechanism wears out from contamination or overload. Lubricate the ratchet mechanism regularly and never exceed the rated capacity. A failed ratchet under load can result in uncontrolled dropping of heavy objects with potentially fatal consequences. The shadow arsenal, when systems become weapons. Now, here's the part that transforms this from tool collection to infrastructure independence. Understanding how these 5 systems integrate into capabilities that didn't exist before. When you combine access tools with fabrication capability, movement systems with precision measurement, and mobile deployment with field modifications, you create problem-solving capacity that operates independently of normal support structures. A real-world example, when Hurricane Laura knocked out power for 3 weeks, one operator used the angle grinder to harvest aluminum siding from damaged buildings, the stick welder to fabricate a wind generator frame, the oscillating tool to create precision turbine blades, and the measurement tools to balance the rotating assembly. The result was a functioning electrical generation system built entirely from disaster debris and $29 worth of Harbor Freight tools. The water pump became part of a cooling system for extended welding operations. The impact driver assembled the tower structure using salvaged bolts. The dollies transported materials from multiple scavenging locations. The tool chest became a mobile workshop that followed the construction site. But here's the darker integration that nobody talks about publicly. When civil order breaks down completely, these same systems create defensive capabilities that professional security contractors charge tens of thousands to install. The angle grinder cuts firing ports in concrete walls. The welder creates vehicle barriers and reinforced doors. The chain hoists position heavy obstacles and create mechanical advantage for improvised defenses. During the riots 2 years ago, one operator used bolt cutters to harvest chain link fencing from abandoned construction sites, working through the night while sirens wailed in the distance. The reciprocating saw cut the fencing into manageable sections, the metallic scraping sound masked by the chaos echoing off nearby buildings. The drill attached the sections to existing structures with salvage bolts, creating layered defensive barriers around his property. The oscillating tool created narrow slots and wooden barriers for observation and defensive fire, the high-pitched whine barely audible over the distant sound of breaking glass. You could smell smoke from burning buildings 6 blocks away, and every few minutes the work would stop while groups of people moved past in the darkness. The come-along served as a force multiplier for moving heavy defensive obstacles into position, concrete planters, steel barriers, even abandoned cars, anything that could channel approaching threats into predetermined kill zones. The submersible pump created water pressure for fire suppression when professional fire services weren't responding to calls in his area. The hose connections were improvised from salvaged parts, but the pressure was sufficient to protect his property when the house 2 doors down caught fire from Molotov cocktails. And here's the integration most people never consider. The digital calibers enable precision fabrication of trip mechanisms and early warning devices, while the oscillating tool cuts the precise notches and channels that make improvised security systems actually function reliably. The mobile workshop ensures these capabilities can be rapidly deployed wherever they're needed most. Total cost for materials was zero. Labor cost was 18 hours spread over 3 days while the neighborhood burned around him. When the smoke cleared and investigators asked questions, all they found were cheap tools that didn't look like anything special. My shadow arsenal today. Here's exactly what my current Harbor Freight inventory looks like. The specificity matters because it proves this isn't theoretical, it's a functional system that exists in the real world.